Welcome to Parents Make a Difference. Today we have a special guest. He's a social media expert, educating children and empowering parents on the topic of the use of technology, social networking, and online safety. He's been on TED Talks, a CTV Morning Live, breakfast television. He's educating even officers on safety online. I am excited to have a conversation with Paul Davis. Paul Davis, welcome to Parents Make a Difference. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
You have a lot of knowledge in this field. What's your background?
So for the past 32 years of my life, I've dedicated to information technology and cyber. But 12 years ago at my daughter's school, the principal approached me and asked me why kids get in trouble using technology. And the conversation circled around that parents gave their kids too much technology at a young age. And those parents are completely oblivious as to what their kids do with it online. So we had a conversation about speaking to the kids and protecting them, which I did. And doing one small favor changed my life personally forever. I've now had the pleasure of speaking in person to 770,000 students in 6 provinces and 5 states, 95,000 virtually, along with law enforcement across this country. And speaking to kids is effectively the highlight of my week. And the reason is because when I deliver presentations to students, I deliver facts. So my presentations, there's never fear, threats. And after you give kids facts, you give them directives based on those facts. And the good news is everyone hears the exact same words come out of my mouth. The better news is most make wise choices. Otherwise, you can't have the schedule that I do. The sad news is statistically, a very small percentage will make bad choices. We can't change the whole world. We can get through most of them because we're not threatening them. We're giving them data. And then upon giving them data, you tell them to make wise choices as a result. And most are very, very receptive to doing that. And this is where I land today. This is my life.
Wow. Well, you know what? We definitely, as parents, need to be educated. So this cause is a very important cause, especially with how we have so much technology at our fingertips and children are getting it younger and younger. I know I'm also concerned over the being overexposed to technology for our children. Really don't have much control over what they're watching. They're on so much. I mean, I know we should be controlling it, but what's your advice on that to parents that are listening, myself included?
You don't allow technology to babysit your child. Don't count on software to replace you. I don't care how busy you are. I'm busy too, but we have a responsibility to our kids. And that's to make sure they're safe online. So if you're going to empower them with technology, you will guide them and protect them on the technology you've given them. And for the parents to say, yes, but I don't understand, it is your responsibility to understand. It is not a school's responsibility. It's not society's. It's yours. It's your child. It's your technology that you've loaned them. You don't have to be tech savvy. It's not about that. It's about investing time in your child's life and understanding what they're doing, where they're accessing, who they're connecting with. That's pretty simple. And then it requires putting some boundaries in place. So let me give you my 3 pillars for online safety. Number 1, no technology in your child's bedroom. Computers, iPods, iPads, tablets do not belong in your child's bedroom at home. Your child was given a gift at birth called curiosity. But curiosity in their bedroom by themselves, connected to the internet, is a recipe for danger. Technology must be used in the common area of the home where parents and guardians can be there to guide them with the gift of curiosity and the gift of technology. That's our responsibility. Number 2, no smartphones until middle to end of grade 8. You will be guilted into giving them a phone because apparently they're the only ones without it. They need it in case of an emergency. They need it to contact their friends. And you will be guilted and you'll feel bad for them. Well, you're not going to feel guilty because you're a parent. You're not going to cave in. You know as well as I do that a smartphone is a distraction in that young child's life. Now, do I want to support parents who need to connect with their child? Of course I do. Buy them a flip phone. They're available on Amazon. And if you don't want to get your child a flip phone, get a really old smartphone, about 3 to 5 generations old. It doesn't have to be the latest and greatest. So at least they have a device that makes phone calls and texts, but won't distract them. And number 3, you will not permit them on social media until the age of 13. The terms of service. That's not my rule. That's the terms of service on social media. You must be 13. The number 1 way kids get bullied, offended, threatened, insulted online is through social media. They're not allowed to be on. And the funny part is that parents, for some reason, like to point fingers at the world when their child who's 10 years old on TikTok and Snapchat gets bullied, offended, threatened, and they want to point fingers at the world like it's not my fault. Well, it is. You allowed them on there and they should never have been on there in the first place. The world's a mean place. It's not a nice place. Most of us are very nice, but we got mean people out there. And those mean people have the right to be there. Your child shouldn't be there. Your child has a right to be there when they're the right age and then deal with it accordingly. But up until then, why don't you protect those young eyes of theirs? and their ears. So if parents follow those three pillars, it's
Mhm.
amazing. It's amazing how safe a child can be online. But that takes effort. And that's what parenting is all about.
Right. And then that's something that we need to come to the understanding that, yes, we're going to probably be exhausted trying to fight this fight, but it needs to be fought. There's an overuse of technology from the young ones to the older ones, and there's a misuse, and in the sense that, they're seeing things they're not supposed to be seeing at too young of an age, and then we're going to have bigger problems. It's going to drain us, but we have to do this. We
And
have
you
to.
do know the saying, you can't unsee what you've seen. Listen, I don't care. No one will ever convince me that any amount of therapy, counseling, religion is going to remove what your child saw. It's ingrained in their head.
Mhm.
And so, I'm not here to take away opportunity from therapists. No, like, listen, we need to get them counseling and help. All we're doing is really we're trying to mitigate and reduce what they've been subjected to. But will they ever unsee it? Absolutely not. There's tons of evidence out there. So when I say your child at a young age can be scarred, you can't unsee what you've seen. And that's a very regretful statement, but it's also a fact. And
Mhm.
so that's why we want to protect those kids as long as possible.
So, what's your advice on, now that they're walking away with their devices, they're in the other room, they go upstairs, downstairs. What's your advice on how we can better monitor it?
Well, go back to rule number one, no technology in the bedroom. So first of all, the technology must be in the common area of the home where parents and guardians can be there to guide their kids with the technology they've given them. So, if you're making dinner, they're using tech at the dinner table before dinner, because at dinner tables, we're not going to have any phones. That's disrespectful, rude. But if they're
That needs
sitting
to
there
be a
while
rule,
you're,
right? In all households, we hope
that's,
that we're
that's
going
not
to
the rule of
start.
online safety. That's the golden rule of respect.
That's right.
Right. But while you're making dinner, let them use their technology, let them do some homework. But you're there because you can guide them. And if something comes up, you're there to respond to them. If you're not home, there's software available that can restrict the times your child connects online. They're not going to like it, but of course, that's something that's very important because you want to restrict and filter what they potentially have access to. So make sure the technology is not behind closed doors, and make sure you are invested when they are using the technology. And when I say put boundaries in place, say, listen, this is where you're allowed to use your tablet. This is where you're allowed to use your phone. And if they don't like it, they don't get it. It's pretty simple. I'm not about the strike one, strike two, strike three, strike 10, take it away for a minute. And I know I'm about giving them a boundary. And if they fail to abide by those rules and guidelines, the consequence will be loss of technology for a very prolonged period of time. And I think I'm very hard. I met a parent this week doing a parent consultation. Their restriction because of what their child did is even greater than mine. But I mean, listen, to every parent their own, but at least
Yes.
that child learned I messed up and it's not going to happen again. Well, first of all, I can't because that kid won't have access to technology for a long time, but that kid learned their lesson.
What suggestion? I know it's just a suggestion. How long would you take it away for if someone is not abiding by the boundaries? And of course, every parent can do whatever they choose, but what's your suggestion?
I can't really give a suggestion, but I'll tell you that if my daughters ever broke out one of my golden rules, the first loss of device would be for 1 month. And parents are like, oh my goodness. Yeah, well, that's actually nothing compared to the parent I spoke to this week. But I'd go 1 month right away and they will feel the pain. They never went down that path. I mean, listen, my daughters were brought up in a tech home with a lot of rules. They didn't feel that my rules were restrictive or punishing. They knew why they had rules because of what I do for a living and my knowledge, and they gained my knowledge. So it was actually really simple in my home. But when parents give their kids tech and then try and take it back after my presentation in terms of restrictions, they find a challenge there. But that's where parents have to be firm and say, look, I made a poor choice. I wasn't thinking. I didn't understand how I do, and I'm going to correct it. And I've always told this to parents, acknowledge your mistakes and be better.
So
I'm
for those
amazing.
parents listening there and you made a mistake, don't worry. I mean, I'm there with you because I have to fix some of my mistakes too in regards to technology. And so I'm thankful for hearing some of your advice, Paul. But we can do it. We can do it. It's worth the fight. It's worth reflecting and talking about it. And I mean, it's really just a fight with ourselves to try to move in a different direction. Conversation is what's important. When I'm talking about it's a fight, it's not a fight against the child. It's just,
Right.
educating them that we're educated now and what we've seen and being firm on our
Correct.
choices, right?
Correct.
Now that you're educating us. um, what what is your screen time boundaries?
Well, every study is inconclusive. You can look at studies by organizations in Canada, United States. You'll notice they have different numbers associated with it with different ages. So I don't look at the screen time. I mean, listen, 8 hours a day obviously is ridiculous. But I will tell you that if you, let's say your child's in grade six, and let's use 4 hours to 4.5 hours, which you might say is a lot. I agree with you, but let's follow this as an example. I have a screen time strategy which breaks screen time into three segments. 1/3 of their screen time every day, school. 1/3 of their screen time, consumption. Let them be a kid. Let them play their favorite games, watch their favorite TV shows. They're allowed to. The last third needs to be for what's called creation, coding, blogging, app development, robotics, podcasting. This is what I teach grade 4, 5s, and 6s about where they should be online at the end of my presentation. Now, when you take those three segments and you break them up and you incorporate, exercise, walking the dog, making dinner, cutting the grass, shoveling the snow, all that stuff, because it's not 4 to 4.5 hours of consecutive screen time, that's the first positive. And because every segment is different, meaning only one of the three is consumption, because you don't want all three to be consumption, screen time doesn't have to be the enemy. It can actually work in our favor. Mm-hmm. But that's going back to parenting, because this is a discipline. Your kid's not going to do that by themselves. You're going to have to say, all right, here's your time for school. Here's your time for being a kid. Go and play your favorite game. Do what you want. Oh, by the way, the last segment, you're going to create a podcast. You're going to create a website. You're going to spend some time on educational apps, whatever it is. All of a sudden, that 4.5 hours doesn't seem to be that bad, does it? Because it's not all consumption. It was broken up during the day. We incorporate exercise and all that other stuff. So we can look at a number, or we can look at how the time is used. And I like to go how the time is used. Now, again, you throw 8 hours a day out there, we're getting ridiculous. And so, yes, we have to kind of rein it back in. But if you look at 4.5 hours, it's actually not that bad if you use that breakup strategy. I have a video on that, and I can send you a link to it so parents can watch it and see it all over again, how I break down that screen time. You have to go to my Facebook page, click on the video section, and you'll see it there on screen time.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to seeing that myself. As parents, I mean, we've got to give them suggestions. We've got to, we can't just say, well, you figure it out. I mean, we could, but then sometimes, I don't know. Well, okay, let's talk about this. Let's figure out what is it that you like? What else can you do? And brainstorm together. We're going to have to do a lot of encouraging, because I think with the pandemic, a lot of people have just, a lot of kids have gravitated to technology. We're going to have to.
That's okay, so long as we put the boundaries in place. So what we start off with the beginning, which are the 3 pillars of online safety, restrictions on screen time. I tell parents, this is not a bad situation if you invest time and effort. I'm being sincere about this. It's bad because we have no restrictions, we have no boundaries, we have unlimited screen time. We put them on social media at a young age. We give them $1,000 smartphone in grade 4. That's the problem. It can be rectified and it can be corrected. It can be prevented if your kids are even younger listening to this, if we simply follow those guys. I can't make this any easier.
Yes.
But you know what parents say? This is work. I'm not a parenting expert. That's our job. And one example I always give to parents, look, I'm amazing at being a tech dad. Did I need help elsewhere? Of course I did. That's why I listened to people that were smarter than me. I realized, oh, you know what? I made a mistake doing that. I made a poor choice. I like to call them poor choices.
Yeah, me too.
But I corrected them, and I became a better parent in that capacity because I listened to someone who was an expert in that field. We're not experts in everything, but when you listen to that expert in that field and it applies to you, make the change. Very simple. But let's go back to everyone looks at it as work. And when you look at parents sometimes, and I see them at the mall, and the kid hasn't even said mama, daddy yet, but there's an iPad in front of them and they're being occupied because the parents don't want them to allow to take in the world around them. We're already going down that path of technology is going to be the babysitter for this child, and it's going to be hard to take it away. I remember being on a radio show in Alberta, and the host of the radio show said to me, I can't wait to hear you, Paul, because my 6-year-old is addicted to her device. Mm-hmm. I was about to go on air, so I didn't have time to go off, and I'm saying, your 6-year-old is addicted to a device. Where do you think the problem is there? Mm-hmm. That's parenting. That's not the 6-year-old's problem. That's you putting too much in your child's hands at a young age. And then when you try and take it away, you see that emotional response or crying. That's your fault.
The conversation's important, and you sharing this information where, helping us to think, parents to reevaluate, reflect on anything that they've done and where they can pivot and change things. And we can always change. So that's the good news.
Yeah.
That's the good news. In education is empowering. What are your thoughts regarding gaming online? I mean, I know that it's been said, oh, I'm playing with my friends, but do you really know them? Are they from school? No, but they're my friends.
My message is very simple. Friends are not found and made online. And what parents need to do is they need to define to their child what is a friend? And I mean, literally define it to them. Someone you've met at school, your sports team, your religious institution. It doesn't matter. A human being that you've met, you've both, that's a friend. When kids go online and they say, oh, I'm talking to my friend, parents need to pause, stop, and say, who? Literally question them. And if they cannot define, they're talking to a stranger. But here's what happens: kids engage in conversations with complete strangers, which again, parents should never allow. A chat box will appear. Hey, what's up? What's up? Not much, you. And all that conversation, that's a friend. I've seen it time and time again. That's not a friend, that's a stranger. And so when I hear stories of what's happened to kids as a result of these quote unquote friends they met online, it's concerning because it all could have been prevented if parents would have been instilled in their child that a friend is not found and made online. Stop calling them friends or strangers. Winning the lottery is very difficult. Could you find a literally human friend? You absolutely can. No denying it. What are the odds of it? Yeah, it's like almost winning a lottery because you don't know who's on the other end of that screen. So I'm all for kids playing games. I really am, with the real friends. It's a wonderful escape with a limited amount of time, knowing that person is someone that child's parents probably know your parents, you guys.
Mhm.
And then gaming is awesome, provided it's, of course, age appropriate gaming.
Right, that's another issue in itself. What are some of the online safety concerns you have that are coming up a lot when talking to parents, talking to students?
Predatory action, sexual images being transmitted, extortion, not yet, but as they get older, more hacking and identity theft. But it's communication, number one, communication with strangers.
You had an interesting comment I heard on one of your sessions online about if you take a photo of yourself,
Mhm.
if you can mention a little bit about that child pornography.
Nudity, partial nudity, sexual activity is called child pornography. Of course, 17 years of age and under. And the one message I tell parents is that there's going to be pressure for your child at some point in high school, usually when it happens, where they might be asked for a picture. And the one thing I tell students is make sure you never, ever take a picture of your body and transmit it, not as a youth, not as an adult. In the cyber world, it is the one thing you never do. And because the internet never forgets, it's not very forgiving. And so when that picture is out there, you've lost it. You will never get it back. And what parents don't seem to understand in the context of what I'm speaking about is that the child is using a phone where the legal ownership is that of the parents. And so parents aren't aware that the images on your child's device during an investigation don't only impact you, they impact the parents because the parents own the device. Remember, police investigations start off with the owner before they lead down to the user. And so a parent has this device they've loaned to their child and it contains images depicting child pornography. And parents are oblivious to that. And so it's a whole deep conversation, which we're not going to get into, but messaging is very simple. Sexuality, social media, and smartphones do not mix.
And what's your point of view on cyberbullying? What can we do about it?
Well, it's actually really simple on how to deal with it. Number one, you never ever respond to a bully because you get wrapped up in the problem, and you need to know that the criminal code in Canada covers cyberbullying. It's extensive. Number two, if anyone ever threatens, hurts you, harasses you online, you report everything. Print out every picture, post, comment, chat session, screenshot, gather all the evidence that's hurt you. Talk to a parent, teacher, principal, someone you trust, and say, I need help. They need to report it. But our kids need to stop fearing snitch culture. And unfortunately, a lot of them do. They're afraid of speaking out because of how they will be perceived.
Mm-hmm.
So our kids need to be empowered to speak out. They need to be supported when they speak out. And unfortunately, that's not as prevalent as it was 20 years ago, which we're not going to get into, but they need to be more supported right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree with you. I'm trying to teach even the young ones and
yep.
instead of seeing things happen, because whether it's face-to-face bullying, whether it's cyber, it's all the same. And if people are standing up, maybe people will stand down, the ones that are doing it.
The one thing that concerns me and what I've seen a transition over the past 20 years is that because there's no true consequence as a result of bullying, meaning hard consequence, kids are more emboldened to feel they can get away with it because they know that they might have a in-school suspension for a day, and they know they won. They know that if something happens, well, mom's going to support me, and I'm really never going to be at fault. I can give you example after example of where the system has changed, and that I see more victims having to leave schools to find safer places versus the bully having to leave to allow the school to be a safer place. And I know that's really hard for some to hear, but I'm giving you data. We need to correct the ship when it comes to that. And we also need to be very vocal when it comes to the anti-bullying programs we have in schools. The anti-bullying week that's designated for 1 week, I believe, every November, talks about, coming to school wearing colors, making signs, posters, pledges, all that stuff. And I completely support that. It has to be backed up every day of those 5 days with use your voice. Otherwise, and parents, this is targeted to you. Your child going to school one day wearing pink, and by the way, it looks really good on social media, but you haven't solved the problem. You have gestured what your intentions are, which I completely support. I've got a wardrobe of pink. Why? Because I use my voice. We need to, if kids come to school and they wearing pink, saying, you know how you're going to make this work? Use your voice, speak out. Did you guys sign a pledge? I will not bully. That's amazing. Use your voice. Otherwise that signature doesn't work. Did you make a sign? We stand up to bullying. That's amazing. Use your voice. Every project must end off with use your voice.
Use your voice. Use your voice. That's what we should be talking about at home.
Yep.
Telling our kids to use their voice, to speak out when they see something's not right.
Exactly.
Use their voice. We can do it in we don't need to do it in a mean way. We can still do it in a way that we're respectful of each other, but we need to use our voice.
And I think the one thing that we're missing as well is that kids think that they're snitching, they're ratting out when they use their voice. Well, effectively, I mean, they're reporting, right, which is important. But the other part is, which I don't think many people are talking about, is when you speak out, you actually might be finding help for the kid that was being mean and hurtful. And when they go to a principal, that principal might be able to identify, here, there's something missing in this child's life that requires maybe help beyond our school. And that's why they're acting a certain way. So yes, there needs to be consequence. They hurt someone, but speaking out might find them the help they need. And I know many principals who will lay down a consequence, but then say, you know what, you're a really good person and we're going to find you help. You and I know one principal, we'll just exclude her name. She's a very caring and nurturing human being.
She is.
Known her for a while. She's that type of principal that will find help for that child, knowing that they can be better. So yes, there needs to be consequence, but by speaking out, you might be able to find help for that person to be a better person. And maybe, and I've had this happen in many cases over the past 12 years where kids have come up and said, look, can I share my experience? I'm like, absolutely. And so they shared what happened and how they became better as a result. They were regretful for what happened. They learned, they became better. And because they shared their voice, it actually impacts a lot of kids. We need more of that. We don't want kids to be purposely bad to say, hey, no. If it happens because it's human nature and they made a poor choice, it is a poor choice, it's not an accident, it's not a mistake, it's not a lapse of judgment. Be better, overcome it, and teach others. But we can't help that person if we don't speak out.
You're right. I agree with you. That's very good advice there. I'm encouraging parents to listen to your TED Talk and to the videos you have on Facebook, because you've got some great things to say, and sometimes we need to hear it over and over just to ingrain it, but it's one step at a time. It's I like your 24-hour don't do anything until 24 hours after.
Well, after a parent presentation, that is the golden rule. Do not do it, because parents go home emotionally charged. They literally want to turn everything upside down. Don't. Just go home, process, and then logically implement your rules and guidelines. You're responding based on the choices you made, and you're angry with yourself effectively. Calm down, have a glass of wine if you have to, go into your quiet place and just process. All right, I got to make changes, but don't show emotion, because you got to come in strong versus emotional. Otherwise, they'll see your emotion, they'll feel it, they'll read it, and they'll say, oh yeah, oh, you know what, I could actually take advantage of that. No, you come in headstrong, not heartstrong. And headstrong is derived from heartstrong, but you're making the choices based on how you feel, but they're going to know that it's firm without emotion, because they can play that emotion.
Calm, firm. Yes. Calm and firm. I thank you so much for being an advocate to educate children and empower parents on the use of technology. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I want to just remind all the parents out there that you make a difference.